tonight it's going to be me alone tonight. It's going to be a bit of a difference in the sense that there's been so much in the last week of sports. There's so much to discuss. It will be a little different from the perspective that I am going to follow up with Mr. Fleming, Darian Fleming. Remember, if you were listening last week, we would have had him on to discuss the golfing situation in St. Kitts. And I'll give him a phone call later on to get an update because they would have had their AGM. The golf club would have had their AGM last Tuesday, if I'm correct. And though I was invited, I couldn't necessarily make it, but I tried to follow up with Darian thereafter, at least just to get a little bit of continuity within the program and find out if there is any further good news and anything further that we could do to assist the process. But as I said, we've got a whole lot of different things to discuss, a whole lot of good things to discuss, some bad things, depends on what type of fan you are. If you're West Indian, you're happy, that's for sure. We're going to get to that discussion in a little bit. We had a great weekend in terms of their comeback win with Mr. Kyle Mayers scoring a double century on his debut. We're going to get a bit of commentary from him, and we're going to discuss a little bit about because only this afternoon I'm reading different things because West Indians, we always get really excited as long as our cricket gives us any sign of hope. And this weekend was one of the few weekends that I think I've seen persons feel genuinely happy about a West Indies victory. I think the circumstances out of which they snatched it was also played a part. But as I said, when we get to that discussion, we'll dig down a little bit deeper into it and just see what lessons we can learn and what things we can push on with based on our win over the weekend. But I want to start off with the bang, and that bang was heard loud and clear across the United States of America and other listening countries last night when Mr. Tom Brady would have claimed his 7th Super Bowl ring, now with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I actually remember having a conversation with a friend of mine because I am a Tom Brady fan, and it's a bit of a conundrum in me and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in of itself. A bit of irony there that I think I explained once before, in the sense that the Tampa Bay Buccaneer owners are also the owners of Manchester United. And whilst generally you would want to feel happy for them and everything else, but given what's happening in terms of their management of Manchester United and where they are in the table and what I think they are or are not doing, and then now seeing there's a bit of bittersweetness in the sense that, yes, I'm a Tom Brady fan, so congrats, Tom. I think, I read an interesting article a few weeks ago about trying to describe persons as the greatest of all time because time doesn't stop, and there's probably going to be another athlete in the NFL who's going to come, even this very same Patrick Mahomes, whom everybody seems to be harping on about. I mean, he was honestly not looking anything like a superstar last night, but these are the lessons that you have to learn anyway. And Patrick Mahomes may very well have a 20-year career to overtake Tom Brady's 7 Super Bowl rings, but just Brady in himself to have reached to this point, given what happened at New England, given the fact that he left, and it's almost like he recruited a lot of misfits, Antonio Brown, Rob Gronkowski, Fournette, these guys whom the NFL had practically written off and wanted out. And he brought them, well, I shouldn't say for all of them, because Gronkowski opted to stay away. There was something about, I guess in hindsight, there's something about the New England Patriots that he didn't want to do, or it could very well be his camaraderie and understanding with Tom Brady that brought him back to the Buccaneers, because he had retired after last season in the NFL. And the somewhat acrimonious departure of Brady from the New England Patriots, whom at the point in time was my favorite team. And I should state this from the outset. I am not an NFL fan. Therefore, I do not think I need to necessarily own a team, especially because I don't live in the United States of America anyway. So what sense it? And then they could also use the same argument with being a Manchester United fan. But let's not go there. As far as the NFL is concerned, I don't necessarily own a team. I like Tom Brady as a player, and I like what he represents as a player. I try to separate his politics from his playing career and his playing ethic, because his politics may be one thing, but based on how he operates with his teammates, based on the persons that he always tended to gravitate toward in order to achieve some of the victories and the wins that they have, Randy Moss, and as I said, Antonio Brown, and there are one or two other misfits that he was willing to work with and actually forge very good communication with on the field. That speaks a lot to his character, as well as his leadership, as well as his understanding to a certain extent of athletic prowess and the greatness and what it takes to be on top of it at all times. So I don't have a team. I said all of that to say I don't have a team. I have a player whom I follow, and therefore I was, in essence, following New England Patriots by virtue of the fact that I was a Tom Brady fan. Now, however, I guess I'm going to be a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan for the very near future, up until Tom decides to retire, and then I have to look for another player to support. But up until then, I'm a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan. And as I said, Tampa Bay Buccaneers also owns Manchester United. So yes, there was a lot for me to celebrate last night, but then last night was almost too, I don't know if most fans felt it. The game itself was not, it was consequential, but it was not a very exciting game. The New England Patriots, from the get-go, stamped their authority. Tom Brady stamped his experience, stamped his superiority on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers from the first quarter. And their defense literally humbled the Chiefs' offense. I don't think there's one star, maybe Kelsey or something, they sort of came out with 100 and something yards, 100 and very little bit yards. On the Kansas City Chiefs offensive portion, I don't want to use offensive line because I know that refers to a specific position, that can come out of that game with any sort of feel-good factor. Defensively as well, they were not as good as they should have been, and I do think that some of the calls, whilst they were harsh, they were self-sustained to a certain extent when they started to lose their tempo, when they realized they were losing control of the game, and Brady tearing apart their. I think those two Gronk touchdowns really irked them because for them it was a bit basic, and anybody coming into the final, any coach, any leadership team of an NFL team should know that if it is you're going to go into an NFL final with Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski, Super Bowl with Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski, at the very least, try and triple team, double team Rob so that he does not get easy catching chances. And both of his touchdowns and the one to Antonio Brown were way too easy for me as far as the defensive end of the Chiefs are concerned. I think that overall, they maybe were awestruck, but then they are the reigning champions. So how can you be awestruck if you just did this a year ago? I do think that, yes, Brady outwitted them, but I think that Tampa Bay was more prepared mentally. If it is because Brady brought that experience and Gronkowski brought that experience with him, as well as the coach, Arians, but there is so much about the Buccaneers generally to like, in the sense that the coaching staff, for those who may not know, most of the coaching staff are at least the main coordinators, the offensive, defensive coordinators, are persons of color. They also have two female coaches, one within the offense and one as a fitness and training coach. And so in terms of diversity, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers team, I stand to be corrected, they have the most diverse the, coaching team of all 32 NFL teams, which says a lot for the coach, which says a lot for Tom Brady as the leader of the team and making the decision to go there. And I keep saying it. He picked up the rejects. He picked up the players at the NFL, because I do remember the NFL really wanted to get Antonio Brown out. I do remember a lot of teams refusing to sign him. And again, I guess I got to give a little kudos to the Glazers. But I guess the Glazers themselves were saying to themselves, hey, listen, Tom has been there. He's done this. So let's just hitch our boat onto his cart, or our cart onto his horse, and see where it takes us. And kudos to them, kudos to the organization, kudos to all that they did to reach where they were, because they didn't have the best record. They won all of their games except the Super Bowl on the road. So they earned their stripes away from home before they got there. And when they got there, they were ready for the business. They were ready to defend their turf, and they broke whatever records they had to break in the process. They humbled, and I repeat it again, they humbled the reigning champions, who now have to go back to the drawing board. And I'm certain they'll come again. I'm certain this is not the last we'll be hearing of Patrick Mahomes. But as if I were him, what I would do is, as soon as Tom Brady hangs up his boots, he goes and he sits next to him in his living room and started taking notes. Because Brady last night again showed his class, his intelligence, his leadership. He's a winner, and he is what I would want to encourage persons to emulate in terms of that type of mentality, that type of leadership, that type of insistence on becoming better and challenging yourself, because you're not just accepting the players that the NFL want to get rid of because they are rejects. You're accepting them because you know that they have that talent. I mean, Fournette ran for over 300 yards last night. Antonio Brown got a winning touchdown in the NFL in the Super Bowl. He actually doing things that most other players who would have wanted to marginalize him and everything will never be able to do. So kudos to Brady again. Kudos to the management. Again, it's hard for me to do so in terms of Manchester United, but I've got to take off my Manchester United hat for now. Kudos to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And it'll be interesting to see because Brady also announced that it is not his final year. So it seems as if they're going to come back to do a back-to-back, and he's going to try and fill out his fingers in terms of rings. And let's see how that goes over the next 12 months or so. So, yeah, that's what happened last night. As I said, it was a bit of an anticlimactic kind of feel. I don't think anybody really, because if I'm correct, most persons were supporting Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. And it was anticlimactic because he didn't show up. And it was also anticlimactic because the game was over long before it even really got started properly. I think after the second quarter it got away, and I know the commentators were trying to say, "Oh, don't write him off. He's been done, whatever." But at the same time, as fans, as persons who were watching the game, at least one or two have an idea as to what the game about. We all kind of knew that those guys were rattled, and they ain't coming back at all. So, yeah, it was an interesting view. The halftime show was this guy Weekend, I think. That always provides some entertainment for those who are interested, and then the ads usually come into consideration, but I ain't here to discuss them kind of pointless things. So what I'm going to do is I will look at some EPL football. We had one game played today, and Leeds puts a little spanking in we call them Crystal Palace, 2-0. So Leeds has refound some form. Crystal Palace, on the other hand, a bit inconsistent. I can't recall if they're going through some injury crises or what the situation is, but Patrick Bamford has found back his shooting boots. He scored in the 52nd minute, and Jack Harrison, whom I believe was a Manchester City graduate, he scored in the 3rd minute. So they actually got off to a very early start. I was able to hold on to it until the 52nd minute when they won the game outright. So for some other results, yesterday, Sunday, wow, Sunday was some excitement. And when you speak of excitement, you don't usually refer to Spurs and West Brom. That was a 2-0. It's an expected win. So Jose, I think, got back Harry Kane. And yeah, if they didn't win that game, then you could have well fired him and then again. Wolves and Leicester, two wannabe challengers. They held each other to 0-0 draw. And for Manchester United, that's a good sign, in the sense that these also runs are dropping points while we are dropping points. The big one, the clash, the the walloping. So Liverpool and Man City played an interesting football match up until the 53rd minute. And then for some reason, Alisson forgot what sport he was playing. Or I should say, he may have forgot what side he was playing for. Because, first of all, Alisson controls the ball, and instead of kicking it out, tries to beat the player, miscontrol the dribble, right? And then literally passes the ball to a City player who was able to convert and go up 2-1 on attack. Up until that point in time, it was a 1-0 to City, and then I think it was a Gundogan goal, and then Salah equalized via the penalty spot, a deserved penalty. Although both of the penalty calls were soft calls, in my opinion. Anyways, there we go. I mean, I wouldn't think, because sometimes Manchester United get calls on them too. But both calls to me were a little bit pansy. Then now you have the situation where Alisson goes and gives the City man the ball. Okay, so City goes up 2-1. You would think that, no, it's settling. I mean, after all, you're Anfield. You're defending your turf. This is the famous Anfield. You will never walk alone. Alisson goes and passes the ball again to another City player on the very next play. Attacking play or defensive play, whichever one he was on. And concedes a third goal. And then Phil Foden coming on toward the end of the match now and spank one directly at him, and all he could do is basically parry the ball in back in net. I think it grazed his gloves. I shouldn't say he parried it. He didn't have, it was too much power on it, but literally it was an embarrassing night for him overall. And I do think that he recovers soon, but he cost Liverpool some pride yesterday, and I'm certain he's not feeling very good about himself today and will not do so up for the next few days. How Klopp and this company, I think Klopp went into this season defense of his title a little bit more naive than he should, in the sense that he had to know that his team was going to be the target of all of the teams. You have an unbeaten run, so you have to have in your rank sufficient manpower and quality manpower to be able to sustain whatever little nicks and bruises you get along the way. You were fortunate last season to go the entire season without injuries. I think it was a bit naive to assume that you're going to go through a defense of your season, having those players having put their bodies through all of that last season, and then you're not going to succumb to injuries. And you only reinforce your midfield to the point where now your midfielders could afford to be playing your defense in the form of Henderson and Fabinho. I think that he has to take some blame for that. They recently got some additions in the transfer window. I'm not certain about the quality of the additions. And then now these guys are going to be forced to adapt in a very short space of time to try and help them pull back a 10-point lead. Nah. I don't see Liverpool being in this battle unless City suffers such a severe drop of form. And again, anything is possible. But this show on Sunday. I sat and I watched it, and it was quite amusing, but it's a little disappointing in the sense that City went 5 up on United. But in terms of Liverpool being humbled, wow, that was a proper cut tail, as my granny would say. Chelsea have been continuing their form under, hear me, Lampard. Tuchel. Lampard done go anywhere already. 2-1 over Sheffield United, who has been trying to show a little bit of resurgence over the last few. They're still stuck to the bottom of the table, however. Then on Saturday, our London neighbours, or London little brothers, Arsenal, after showing some keen form over the last month or so, have again found themselves in a little bit of a glut. And they lost 1-0 to Aston Villa. So, Gunners fans, I can't say how you feel, but I don't think you'll be feeling that bad. I think you did some good business in the transfer window. There's a lot to be said about what you could do in the future, but you got to start producing on the pitch, because the mid-table look is not a good look on Arsenal. Burnley and Brighton went to a 1-1 draw. Can you imagine how exciting that game was? I don't think I missed anything. You're not seeing it. Newcastle, Southampton, 3-2. Castle finally got another victory. Southampton, after that drubbing last week from Manchester United, would have been hoping to try and catch back themselves. I do believe they'd probably be suffering from some suspensions as well too. So yeah, they got to shore up that defense quickly though, because that's 12 goals in 2 games. That's what some people concede in an entire season, some teams. So, Fulham and West Ham, they had I guess, entertaining 0-0 draw. Something, again, I'm glad I didn't see. Then we had anyways, Manchester United draw 3-3 with Everton. Now, I don't want to say much about it other than, to me, is some other points dropped by Manchester United. I have been saying it in the different forums that I am participating in terms of Manchester United. Harry Maguire is not Manchester United first team sure start quality. I want to weigh my words carefully. I, in fact, used, for Manchester United fans, I actually used a similarity, and I said he's a rich man's Johnny Evans. So if we are going to try and really push, at the very least, Manchester City, or any team for that matter, or try to win any type of trophy, we need to be realistic as a management about what we're doing with Harry Maguire. It is not Manchester United quality. Furthermore, he's your captain. So if your captain is lacking in quality, what in the world would you expect from your performances? Can he make does he make 1 or 2 good performances every now and then? Yes. But like Chris Smalling before him, whom we all knew and still know, probably one of the more talented defenders in England, he is inconsistent. And those goals that were conceded yesterday, whilst I also have a little piece to say on David De Gea, I would like to say, at the very least, the last goal, it's almost like this man, he just fall asleep mentally during the people in them game. You can't do that in the last seconds of a football match. Come on, man. That's the most basic things the coach tells you. Log on to the very end. The game does not stop until the final whistle. Why are you being out-hustled? Why are you always being out-hustled? Except for when, like, you get charged up or somebody gear some hardwood before the game or something of the sort, and then you just come and have this excellent game where you want to bully everybody on the field. But then you're still getting out-hustled by Everton, by Dominic Calvert-Lewin. You understand what I'm saying? So it's like, it's so frustrating. And then we are saying that he is England's first choice defender and Manchester United's first choice defender, central defender. That's a Manchester United quality. You know what I mean? So I think we need to get over that hump, start to deal with some reality as it relates to Harry Maguire, and maybe, just maybe, we could seriously talk about challenging Manchester City and Liverpool as it relates to it, because these guys have quality. Look at John Stones. Everybody was abusing John Stones a few months ago. Can't say weeks, months, because they're on a 14-game winning streak. But Pep took his time with John Stones because he knew at the end of the day John Stones was a quality defender. What is Harry Maguire doing with the captaincy armband? Anyways, then we get to the point of, and I think I should need to take a sip of water for this one. We get to the point of David De Gea. David De Gea has been a faithful servant of the club, and he is also Player of the Year at least 4 times, which says to us that he is probably one of our better goalkeepers, and he will go down as a legend at some point in time in our future. But we also need to be realistic about it. Forgive me. We also need to be realistic about it. 1, David De Gea is past his prime. Yes, there were days when he would win us games based on his form and his ability alone. Those days are gone. And every season, in my estimation, David, over the past, I would say about 3 seasons, David has been uncontested in our goal. No questions asked. But he has cost us at least 18 points per season due to errors. Now, yes, I appreciate all that you have done, sir, but at this point, you are a liability. What bothers me even more about that situation is Sergio Romero deputized for David De Gea, whilst Dean Henderson went over and had a magnificent season with Sheffield United last season. Magnificent. I mean, every team in England, if they had the opportunity, would sign Dean Henderson and make him number 1. The decision was made to unceremoniously do away with Sergio Romero because you don't want to send him back out on loan, and I'm referring to Dean Henderson. So you want to keep him in your ranks. You have to keep him happy. The only way I can keep him happy, because you now have literally 3 international goalkeepers at your fingertips, is to disenfranchise another one of your faithful goal. The man deputized for David De Gea, and honestly has an excellent record in doing so. Won us trophies. Whenever, unfortunately, since Louis Van Gaal left, I should say Mourinho, whenever Romero deputized and he won something, it's because LVG and Mourinho stuck with him throughout the entire cup. Ole, and I ain't going to spend much time bashing him tonight because I don't think that's going to be helpful to the discussion. Ole, in his great wisdom, decided, no, let me take him out to the cup competitions and give, especially when they come down to the finals and semi-finals and this kind of thing, and let David play. Now, needless to say, Ole has no trophies to show for it. I wonder whose wisdom could be better on in terms of, but I'm not here to bash Ole tonight. Anyways, you get rid of Romero. I think Romero just signed for some first division team in England or something of the sort. You brought in Dean Henderson from Sheffield United. Sheffield United have not yet recovered from losing Dean Henderson. They are placed at the dead bottom of the table. Last season, they finished 8th or 9th or something of the sort. So they're now dead bottom, right? That's to tell you the impact of losing Dean Henderson for Sheffield United. We bring in Dean and sit down and watch David clown around with our games, and don't say to David, take a rest, let Dean play. And then if it is that Dean make an error, then you could perhaps reinsert him. So David is entitled to his starting position when you have perhaps, in my opinion, a better goalkeeper, but definitely a goalkeeper with better upside sitting on your bench. Madness. And again, I'm not here to bash Ole, but you cannot tell me that that makes any kind of sense. And then looking at what happened there on Saturday, some big rethink needs to be done in terms of goalkeeping at Manchester United. We're spending millions of dollars on attack. We linked with Sancho, linked with Grealish. I want us to be linked with somebody to replace Harry Maguire. And I want us to be able to say to David De Gea, thank you for your service. If it is you're willing to sit on the bench and do cup competitions and a reduction in salary or whatever it takes, fine. But find a way to reduce his salary, because apparently that's one of his considerations. One of the considerations. His salary is so high that they can't bench him. But find a way to better utilize him. If it means dropping him for a game or two, for him to catch back himself and realize that first choice is not an entitlement. You have to earn that. And I don't think that Manchester United, or in terms of its management, have been able to send that message clearly to him. And therefore, these results that you saw, like with what happened at Everton on Saturday, there are going to be more and more of them. So, yeah, that's part of what we're going to discuss tonight. I'm going to take a little break, and when I come back, we'll be looking at some West Indies cricket. We have a little bit of a discussion on that. And then I want to touch a little bit on the SKNFA. There have been some, I don't think that'll be a minute or so, in the sense that I just want to get some updates as to where we are there. And a little bit of the NBA. And as I said, I want to call Darian. So if I have a little bit of time, I'll call Darian to get an update on the golf and see how things transpired at their meeting. So bear with me for a few minutes, probably like 2 minutes or so. And when I come back, on the flip side, we will break down some West Indies cricket and other exciting topics.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Roll out the cool as the breeze. Wallet look like a science book, where a school never teach. Rev the truck up to the mountain top, and as soon as me reach, go get the sun, kick the shoes off my feet, then me bless the cup, 32 sounds me read. Give thanks for the love me receive, me work every day, in the street, and every day, and with nights like these, when a holiday, touch on the beach, white t-shirt and I got off jeans, I will not need no sneakers, no. Sun grains and massage me feet, blessing a flow like river. Girl drop asleep, she steam the indica, wake her and say, sun burning up till it red. Welcome to Kingston every day. It's a summer every night, feel like a Friday. Rev the bike till I'm swear. It's on my high grade, I make the irate. Still with all the red guys, and nobody thinks every night a Friday. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. General, when you touch the road, me and my empress and my brother, then you rolling the stranger. Herbs bitter like an emerald and 1 pound. Now several in the chalice, pop it up, no Babylon to the vapor. Tell her them ready for the energy, we bringing every style of them, I follow is how we are the maker. Spending like I run, I think I'm Bolton. We come here, remember every day, I summer when a day at Jamaica. Hold on, oh, baby, this place kinda crazy. Oh, everybody a dance, catch the energy. Babylon can't stop the music. Rastafari keep it grooving. The whole world I pray for touchdown in the West Indies. God.
I pray to Jah that we can find a solution. Babylon,
Sun burning up till it red. Welcome to Kingston every day. It's a summer every night, feel like a Friday. Rev the bike till I'm swear. It's on my high grade, I make the irate. Still we not got red light, and nobody thinks every night a Friday. Oh yeah, every day in the streets, every day and rich nights like these. When a holiday, we touch on the beach, a white t-shirt and a cut off jeans, and we not need no sneakers. No, the warmth and paint, I massage my feet, my locks long like Jesus locks. When the steam this sativa up, la 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 la, dance up, la la la, dance up, oh la la, dance up, and you love it, dance up, la la, people dance up, people dance up, la la la, people dance up, la la la, people dance up, la la la. The sun burning up till it red, oh yeah. Welcome to Kingston every day. It's a summer every night, feel like a Friday. Oh yeah, rev the bike till them shavers are on the high grade. I make the irate. Oh yeah, still we not got red. Yeah, if nobody thinks every night a Friday. Oh yeah, oh yeah. The sun burning up till it red. Oh yeah. Welcome to Kingston every day. It's a summer every night, feel like a Friday. Oh yeah, rev the bike till them shavers are on the high grade. I make the irate. Oh yeah, still we not got red. Yeah, if nobody thinks every night a Friday. Oh yeah.
Yeah, welcome back to the bench meeting with your number one panelists and sports. I guess I'm commentating now and doing other different things, but definitely a sports fanalist. I like to compare myself as a fan as well as someone who tries to analyze a lot of this stuff behind the scenes as well. So here we go. Regional cricket. First of all, I need to mention that there is a Super 50 tournament going on in Antigua at this point in time. And our Leeward Islands succumbed to the volcanoes, the Windward volcanoes, by 31 runs behind Kevin Stout and Sunil Ambris half centuries. Despite what was a very good knock from, let me get the, I think it's Nitish Kumar. Of the Leeward Island Hurricanes. I didn't see many of our familiar faces. When I say familiar faces, I didn't see, or I was looking for our St Kitts cricketers in the Leeward Islands cricket team, but I can't speak to it right now. So until I do, I would, because I keep looking for the name of the Shane Berridge gentleman in either in the regional Leeward Islands team or in the West Indies provisional team, because I was figuring based on the level of interest I saw and the potential that was spoken of in our interviews with Richard and otherwise, I was hoping to see him. So maybe someone could call in and let me know whether or not he's injured or there is some reason that he wasn't selected as part of the Hurricanes team. But I did take a note of the fact that I didn't see him. So yeah, I didn't see his name recorded in this particular match. Maybe he will be there in future matches, and as I said, maybe somebody can enlighten me later on. As far as regional cricket is concerned, yeah, that was the big news. Then we had what was a very satisfying come from behind victory with the West Indies over the weekend. And everybody, I've been noticing a lot of discussions about it on Facebook and social media and otherwise. And it was a very good performance. They didn't give up. And it was very interesting to see who the protagonists were in this series so far in terms of the persons who came to show up to bat and to hold out the wickets and stuff like that. And this guy Kyle Mears. Now, as I said, I went to school with Shirley Clark at UE, his father. And Shirley was one of those whom there was a lot of potential there and there was a lot of hype around him. But I get the Shirley was more of a saga boy for me because we all used to hang out together and things. So I don't get the impression that Shirley pushed himself as much as he could have to be able to make regional teams. But seeing his son now perform and a double century on debut, I was like, man, because Shirley's now a coach. I think he's a level 3 coach. I was like, boy, I had to reach out to him at some point in time and congratulate him because, yeah, this is something of Papa. In fact, when I was reading an article where he actually said he cried when he was watching his son perform because of all the hard work he's been putting in. And Kyle himself had a nice little interview. I thought there was a lot in the interview, and what I'll do, I'll have the interview played. I'll have the interview played for the general public to see, and then to listen to, and then I will have a little discussion on Kyle himself and what I've gathered from him so far in terms of what he could bring to the West Indies team going forward. So I'll first do the interview with Carlos Brathwaite, who would kind of described what Kyle would have gone through prior to the selection to the West Indies team. So run the track.
What can you at least tell us about some of the young boys that we are seeing coming up in the West Indies ranks?
Well, I'm really happy for Kyle Mears. Firstly, he had some rough years, and then he got caught in a bad hurricane in Dominica, and there was a bit of panic in Barbados. No one could get onto him because obviously telephone lines were down, signal was gone, and everyone was fearing the worst. He eventually left that contract, came back to Barbados, bided his time, scored a lot of runs, had a fantastic first-class season, was on the tour to England, didn't get a goal. Then he carried that into CPL, took me for 29 minute over. Haven't forgiven him for that. But just to see all the struggles that he would have gone through to get to where he is today, he deserves everything that he's gotten. And I'm looking forward to watching him play because he's a good player spin, which is something which you don't traditionally see about West Indies batters, and he can bowl as well. So from that point of view, left-handed batter, not fast, but swings it massively. Hoping that he goes well, hoping all the boys go well. And, you know, the good thing is in 2009, Kemar Roach was unearthed, and we see what he's gone on to do. Sammy was unearthed, I guess, as a skipper, and he's gone on to win two World Cups for the West Indies. So hopefully we can find one or two players out of this crop of players that can then mesh well when the big boys come back.
The St Kitts and Nevis Patriots, and he described what was, to me, extremely trying circumstances about Kyle Mears. Now let's hear from Kyle Mears himself, who described his innings. The next tab with the interview with Kyle Mears. No, the one with him not thinking of the target. All right, so when we get that particular, but I wanted to say that hearing Carlos describe what Kyle would have gone through almost kind of laid the groundwork for what he did out there in the field, because you're talking about someone who would have gone through Hurricanes. No, that was the Caught in the Hurricane was the interview with Carlos Brathwaite. Not thinking of the target. All right, we'll play the other one maybe, and then that might give you the actual. Carlos would have seen him as a youngster coming through the ranks, and he just gave us a snapshot of, and then it was also indicated in some other articles that I was reading that he did not stop practicing and training during the lockdown, and he had a very good first class series as well. So this was obviously someone whom had been crafting and grafting and putting in the work on the side that Richard and I would have spoken about a few times, and it's good to see this type of spirit being exemplified and being rewarded. That's the word I'm looking for. Being rewarded in terms of the West Indies cricket. But when you listen to Kyle's actual interview, you realize that Kyle himself he speaks as someone whom quite humble, quite laid back, willing to learn, willing to put in the hard work, willing to play a team player. So I've been seeing a lot of, and I only try to get all of that in because I've been seeing a lot of discussion around, okay, we know what we want to see in terms of West Indies cricket going forward. And I think in Carlos's interview, he even alluded to the crop of 2009 who kind of showed up out in, well, I shouldn't say out of nowhere because Kyle has been putting in the work. He just didn't get a chance in England. But when he got his chance, he took it with his two hands. And maybe we need to start building. This is the point I'm trying to make. Maybe we need to start building our team around these type players who are willing to put in the work, who are willing. And this is not any lack of credit to those who have already done their duties and fulfilled their duties, but it should now be more competition and fair competition. So now Kyle has done what he has done, then he has cemented his place in the team. Somebody now has to come and displace him just on the fact that now you now have to come and make more runs than him when he starts to fail, as opposed to what generally tends to happen is once you have your first team players available, you marginalize these guys, and then they're lost again for another year or two. Thankfully, he was able to put his hand up in the air with a double century. Anything, because I realized De Silva also did, and he's still out there trying as well too. So there's a wind of change blowing through in terms of the player personnel. We just need to focus now on upskilling them and then ensuring, like we've discussed with Richard, and the production line continues to produce this quality, continues to produce this type of attitude, continue to produce players whom actually appreciate playing for West Indies cricket. And again, kudos to the West Indies and Kyle Mayers in particular in terms of their recent results. I also wanted to use that little Carlos Brathwaite plug to whisper to the St Kitts and Nevis Patriots management, if they're listening, or anybody who has their ear, pinch them, that Carlos recently had a very good performance in Australia. I think it was the Big Bash League. And Gail recently also had a magnificent performance, I think a 22 ball 50 or something of the sort, or century or something of the sort, 26 ball century in a T10, no, it's a 50, in a T10. And you think we could consider bringing Gail and Brathwaite back for this? Give Gail his swan song, because it's obvious that Jamaica don't want him anymore. The management in Jamaica don't want him. And St Kitts has been his second home for some of our better performances. So, I mean, if you don't want to give him the captaincy, you don't have to. But I think, though, especially players whom, or why I'm making the suggestion is these guys, for whatever it's worth, found a way to be attached to St Kitts, whether it's via entertainment. In Chris Gale's place, he has good reason to be attached to St Kitts. Carlos, I think, made efforts to sort of integrate himself into the Kittitian. I mean, it's hard to be embraced, and I don't think we embraced him fully because our standards are going to be higher than anything else. But he came and he accepted the responsibility, and he tried. I think he gave us as much as he could give us. Were there mistakes? Yes. But I still think he's deserving of a lot more credit than he has been given. So I'm trying to say to the management, I am not certain what the cost implications are, but if it is that we really want to build, and this year, this COVID year is a good year to try and do something different in terms of the CPL if we decide to stage it. If it is that you are going to stage it in Trinidad, then I think you can give us, we have an opportunity to do what St. Lucia did, in the sense that you could shake up the table again a little bit and give yourself a chance at the final. And if you give yourself a chance at the final, anything could happen on the final. Yes, I know Trinidad have the edge, and because more than likely be held at home and everything else. But I believe with Gale, Brathwaite, you could retain Lewis. You have to retain Lewis as well. You have to retain Cottrell. You have a core there. Devon Thomas, you have to retain he as well. I don't mind you retaining him. And we could pick up one or two superstars along the way. But if you start with that core five, whom have come to be identified with the St. Kitts and Nevis Patriots over the last 8 years, we could give ourselves an opportunity to do something in the CPL this year. But that's just a little plug I wanted to put in there for those who are listening and have the ear of the Patriots management, if it is that it remains as it was in the past. Finally, I was supposed to have actually Mr. Stanley Jacobs of the SKNFA here with me tonight. It was to discuss the restart of the Premier League and football on the whole. I also know that there's supposed to be, if it has not started yet, an official start of the athletic season. And I also know that based on previous discussions, there's supposed to be the start of a volleyball 6v6 competition over the next few. I didn't get the chance to call Darian. There's also promise of a start to the golf, or restart to golfing. However, all of it is being held up by stricter protocols and extra precautions. And I'm saying thankfully because I'm grateful for the efforts being put out to ensure that all persons, especially our athletes and citizens, are kept safe at all times. And at the same time, I also want to encourage, because we're going to have to find a way through to a greater degree of discussion between the organizers of these events and programs and competitions and the NEOECS, because there's no template by which we can work to say we can do this and do that and it will work properly or work perfectly. However, there's an opportunity for us, as we are still pretty well managed, to be able to find ways by which we can work hand in hand to ensure that you get the participation, the viewership and everything else of the sports, and also get the protection of the citizenship and the community who come to witness these sports, whether live or even better on TV or otherwise. So I know there's going to be a level of frustration at this point in time because the authorities are going to want to do everything in their power to protect, and there are always going to be claims of who's right and who's wrong and who overdoing it and everything else. I just want to encourage greater dialogue because our sporting season is critical to not just economic activity, but our youth and their ability to participate. And it's a great opportunity now to capture these minds in the sense that they're not going anywhere right now. And if it is, we can focus our energies to try and get some of these programs held in a safe environment, then we'll be doing a lot better than a lot of our other countries whom we eventually may be competing against in some of these very disciplines going forward in the future. So, yeah, those who are listening and those who are involved in some of these discussions, I don't think there's going to be a winner takes all type scenario or there's only one way. I think there needs to be a lot more dialogue, there needs to be a lot more give and take, and create our own templates, create our own solutions, and going forward, we will all be able to benefit in the sense that our citizens will be protected and we still be able to participate healthily in all of these different events. So, I would like to say a pleasant good night. I would like to tell, and finally, on conclusion, there has been some discussion with myself and the production team about the timing of the program, and it has been recommended, in fact, I shouldn't say recommended, it has been decided that I will move the program to between the hours of 4 to 6 on a Sunday evening, for the mere reason that that's when, in my perception, that's when most of us tend to have a little bit more time on our hands. And the second reason being, whenever I ask for interviewees, they tend to have more availability on the weekend as opposed to on Mondays when they usually have meetings that tend to occupy their time. So from the 20, and I want to be accurate about it, I'm assuming from the 21st, yes, that's correct. From Sunday the 21st, I'll be on from 4 to 6 on the same station, same place, just a different time, and hopefully the same type of exciting content, and hopefully a lot more of the guests that we have been trying to tie down but unable to do so over the last few weeks. So I want to be able to say again thank you to all of our viewers and listeners. It's been a pleasure from your number one panelist, Mr. Kenneth Bob, and we will turn you over to the studio and look forward to hearing you on our last episode on Monday next week, the 15th. And from then forth, we'll have a change of time, as I mentioned earlier, to Sunday the 21st, from Sunday the 21st from 4 to 6 on the evening. So look forward to hearing you one last time next week on Monday. And you can look forward to your comments, interviews, and your participation. Thank you once again. And we're signing out from the bench meeting. And you have a good night.